Welcome to the Buried Dreams podcast. I'm your host, Elle Morris. This episode, we have Sway Kun, a Palestinian residing in the United States. Sway has been on a lifelong quest to find self-love and the true meaning of home. He practices various art forms, particularly dancing, despite growing up in the restricted structure of his country and home. For artist content and news on the latest Buried Dreams, follow us on Instagram at Buried Dreams Podcast. Enjoy. You grew up in Palestine, and you told me that your dad did not let you interact with creative hobbies or things like that. What was that like for you?
So, when you grow up, there was the internet, but when you grow up in such a secluded religious place, your life is a make-believe by your parents. And you grow up not knowing that you have the mind and spirit to be a creative person and have creative outlets, rather than that your parents tell you that there are things in life that are meant for people and not meant for others. And then you kind of believe that as a kid. So I remember I think I was in second or third grade when So You Think You Can Dance became a thing. And I saw a bunch of dancers on TV. And as a kid, I would be why were those people on TV chosen by God to be dancers? And I wasn't given that opportunity, where my dad wants to make me an engineer or a doctor or whatever. So it's your belief system is so skewed, because that's what I literally believed that I wasn't allowed to do that because I wasn't chosen to be so. And I believed that for the longest time.
And that's what he told you, that you're not chosen.
Yes, that it wasn't my path to be a creative. And also my dad's thing was that art and music deteriorates you from the path of God. So anything that, what's the word I'm looking for, that takes you away from being religious is against religion, which is technically not true.
It's not true, because for me personally, I feel like creating is what connects me to God, the creator.
Absolutely. So I just look at other religions where music is such a proprietary thing in terms of connecting with God, like Christianity, and it's just why do people get to connect artistically and be closer to their God? And I just it has to be so linear on my end. For example.
But people in your culture were allowed to dance?
Absolutely. We have our own style of partying and stuff like that. It's hard to describe, but it's predominantly mostly separate. When it's a wedding, it's most separate, where men are in a section on their own and women are in a section on their own. It's not always like that. I feel there's 30, 70, 70 more on the word split. So my brother's wedding, it's one floor is we're just a bunch of dudes, and then the second floor it's a bunch of women, and it's just very separated. That's kind of just depends on which village you're from or what culture, etc. So within the own country, sometimes it's mixed, but not as much. Just I come out here and I it's against religion to appreciate other people doing their religions. For example, let's just say I want to wear a cross. That could technically be against religion, but I don't really believe that in terms of Kanye West's Sunday service, for example. It's gospel and it's meant for Christianity, but who goes to say, based on my own intention, that if I listen to Sunday service, which I absolutely love Kanye's Sunday service, that through that music that I get to connect with my own God through it. So who makes the rules that says I can't do that just because to them it's a Christian gospel, but for me it's my own means of the way I'd like to connect and feel the spirit of what I like to feel, because I just love music and I want to connect musically to things that I care about.
I feel like I connect to God more learning through other religions, because it almost supplements what I've been taught my whole life, and it helps kind of break free the perspectives that were ingrained into my brain from growing up in a religious context and less of a spiritual context. So, particular for me, I have read some of the Quran, but mostly I've read Buddhist texts, and I read a lot of books on spirituality related to Buddhism. But learning those techniques and those tools for connecting to the source, whatever you want to call it, it really supplemented me in my spiritual experience and helped me. It helped shape how I view my, the creator, and I don't even know for me if the creator is just one thing. We see ourselves as with skin and bodies, but does God have a body? Or is God all things in the energy? Because energy is neither created or destroyed. So where did all the energy come from?
I love that. That's a really good perspective. Yeah, like I think one of the main things that I learned from my own religion, studying in my own, is that you actually can't say, even in my own religion, that some other person is going to go to hell just because he doesn't have my religion. We actually can't say that. There's no premise on that because we actually don't know who's going to hell or who's going to heaven, no matter what religion you are. But for me, like one of my favorite things to compare religion to and the way people act based on religion is like free thinkers. You know, you go to places like Finland or Iceland where I believe it's Finland and Iceland or both, where it's an entire country of free thinkers, which is they're atheists and they just believe in the act of being good rather than being good just because of the fear of a higher power. And there's something so beautiful in that we live in a world where, you know, I just look at my own country and even in America here where religion is constructed to make people be good, you know, so you can fear something, that there's something greater than you, so act up rather than just having the natural intent to be a good person like in other countries. You know, it's a fascinating subject. So like how many people out there are actually intentionally wake up with good conviction to be a good person throughout their day rather than I'm just trying to be a good person because my religion tells me to do so. And that's such a huge distinction for me that like I believe that most people aren't intently good and that people use religion to try to be good people. I've just seen that across the board my whole life, like in America and in Palestine. And I say like, you know, going back before we started this, like about the Westworld thing, you know, you create this fake world with AI that are like human beings and you go into this world where you're allowed to do whatever you want with no remorse. So like these species exist with no technically feelings, but they act exactly like humans, feel like humans, and they just loop every day. So they just forget everything that happened to them. What do you do when you put any average or day-to-day human being in a world with zero remorse? You could be the best person on earth, but I feel like there's a demon inside most people where if you have access to something like that, then you're just going to do terrible things to these AI because you could literally do whatever you want in there and you can't die. So you're just going to kill and rape and do like cause havoc and destroy things. And that's what the show shows. And what's so beautiful about the show, and sorry if nobody ever watched it and plan on watching it, but the whole premise of it is that these AI start to remember and start having memories of the things that are happening to them on a day-to-day basis, and then they start to attack back and they try to like escape this Westworld. And what's so beautiful about that is that you as a human being watching the show, you start literally rooting for the AI to kill humans. And you're like, wow, yeah, like just like destroy these bad people and then take over our world. Like, why watching a TV show? Why would I start rooting for literally robots? Like, it's beyond me. But it channels something in you to see that humans might not just be so innately good, at least on the most part. I believe there's plenty of good people out there, but I just don't believe personally that it's the majority.
I think that everyone has a shadow, and I think everyone has good nature about them, even the most terrible people in the world. And I think we're able to understand right from wrong in a way, and I feel like people know when they're doing something that's not morally sound. They feel that inside of themselves, but there's this shadow that wants to eat that negative behavior up, you know? It's kind of like an addiction where it feels good to be bad.
That's an interesting way to think about it. Does it feel good to bad people to do bad things? Probably.
Sometimes. Maybe, I don't know. I think about serial killers in a way. Like, I've watched a lot of true crime. And for the serial killers, I think they know that they are doing something wrong. But at the same time, I think that feels so good to them. Like, they get a high from it. And they're addicted to that high, that they know they're doing something wrong, but the high is so good, just like drug users.
Yeah, it's a power thing, of course.
Like, of course, drugs make you feel like shit. You know, it's like, why do you do them if they make you feel so shitty and terrible and depressed? It's because you get that short, instant gratification of fun, you know?
So do you think that murdering or raping somebody for a serial killer has potentially the same side effects where it feels good to them being in a moment of power above somebody else, and then the next day they might feel like shit about it?
Yeah, I think there's probably a come down after, and then they have to get the fix again.
I could see that. Did you watch Mindhunter?
No.
Okay. It's about the FBI creating their first psychology department in terms of studying the cases of serial killers from back in the day. And it was always fascinating to see how serial killers themselves view what they did. And a lot of it is like a God complex, but also you know, if we want to think about bad people, most important topic in life, I feel like, is the nature versus nurture thing. So can someone still be really bad after having a really, really positive, good upbringing, and vice versa? Like, for example, I did not have a very good upbringing, but I was taught certain morals and values that I definitely take from my upbringing. But I would believe that from the type of upbringing I had, that most people wouldn't handle the pressure and would probably do terrible things. And I still have issues in my current life, even that I feel like from having certain traumas that I'm still dealing with and trying to better myself from. But I feel like how many people are strong-willed enough to go through something so tragic and traumatic, like from people from my country, from war to abuse to all these things that you're surrounded by at such a young age, and then just coming out of it being like of healthy mind and wanting to be a good person and wanting to be a beacon of light for the people around them. Not everybody reacts like this. That's why the bully exists. The bully exists because he's been bullied by probably his father. But like, you know, it's two sides of this coin where like it's either somebody has a terrible upbringing, which is like exhibit A, and then they turn out to be a wonderful person. But how many people of that actually exist? And then the latter part is the people who have a terrible upbringing and turn out to be very terrible people, which is the majority of people. So like, to me, I believe that everything stems and starts with parenting.
Absolutely. I think parenting is such a big influence on how people end up in their lives. I definitely feel like in terms of tools of emotional regulation and, I don't know, anxiety, depression, just very unhappy in my early years outside of the house, inside the house too. But I had such a strong drive to want to come out of that. And I don't know why. I feel like a lot of people don't work as hard as I have worked to get to the place that I've gotten in my mental like stability, like going from, I went a far stretch, you know, from the worst place you could ever be mentally to completely stable, like very emotionally regulated. I do, you know, have my problems week to week, just like everyone else, but I feel like I just really regulate it very well. And it took years and years and years of work. But I have no idea where I was going with this, but
this is a very interesting time for me to do this podcast because, you know, we talk about what it takes for somebody to grow through a certain kind of growth. One part is it has to come from within yourself, but also from what I just experienced recently, it just seems like that going through just tragedy has like such a huge uptick in just growing. It could go the other way.
Okay, that's an important thing because tragedy is so important because it's given me the depth that I have. You know, I'm able to understand things at a deeper level going through the traumas that I have went through. And I feel like if you've had a perfect childhood and everything's been great, it can be hard to connect to people.
Absolutely. I mean, like when I said it goes both ways, like, you know, something really dreadful happening to somebody can like really be their downfall for years ahead. Rather than like, you know, my recent downfall of collective of things that happened in my life, I feel like was just such a boost and be like, wow, like, you know, I told you like a bit ago that, you know, I disappeared for a whole month and 2 weeks of that was completely at home because I quit my job. And I just like this time that I've had where I completely secluded myself from the world and I really focus on myself, from like just various types of meditation to, you know, going to the gym religiously to, you know, it's like I went through something really shitty, a collective of shitty things. Innate reaction was, you know, my younger self would probably sulk for months. You know, I would probably spend 6 months to a year just like letting tragedy like eat me alive, rather than I was just like, all right, like I'm going to wake up the next day and I'm going to feel like complete shit, but I'm going to do everything that I haven't been doing for years. I'm going to dance for an hour. I'm going to like go do some filming. I'm literally going to go to the gym. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to sit in the shower for a whole hour. I'm going to take a bath by the end of the night. I'm going to go swimming early in the morning. I literally like went from like something bad. And then the next day over, I literally just immediately was like, I'm going to do all this that I've been telling myself that I was going to do for years, that I'm going to have this like set times for things that I want to do every day and focus on like my hobbies or my health, etc. And I just literally, it's because of something that I experienced that was bad that caused me to get there. So like bad things are almost super wonderful if you take it the right way and it helps you grow into the person you become. But how many people experience bad things and just like become this thing, rather than like, you know, the growth that I've experienced in the past month is exponential compared to even the last 2 years. That's because I took the time to actually focus on that 100% of my time. So like, but how many people actually take something so terrible and be like, wow, like this is a moment to grow rather than like, I'm going to sit here and sulk because life sucks. So
yeah, that goes into the emotional regulation part. And I also have a friend who's been laid off, and they have a couple of friends, actually. There's been a lot of people that have been laid off recently just because of the state of the economy, and which is a whole nother topic, I guess. There's like a feeling in the air. You can just like feel it. Something's not right. I even feel it at my job, you know. It just seems like there's more of a panic around.
Yeah, I think the whole thing with like, you know, Google or Disney or whatever letting go of like 7,000 people or whatever, and then I feel like this like struck a chord, and like now it's like suddenly all these companies across like the country, and even me just seeing it with my own eyes with my friends, like it's like everybody's getting laid off, and everybody just, all these companies just want to save a shit ton of money now, and it's just like life's getting harder in that aspect.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting to a point where I'm working on with myself and just like making sure I stay like safe financially. Just first 3 years, I need to stay put and just like bunker down. I mean, not like that seriously, but I just feel like I made a lot of like financial decisions recently, and I need to like be very thoughtful about like the money that I'm spending, and I need to work on living on a budget.
The individual in America is a crisis right now, and like being on your own out here is just so brutal. I mean, like I just the difference in America and, you know, other countries that are more close knitted in terms of like almost like tribal is the fact that back home there isn't a singular moment where I would ever feel alone. Now, like I was watching a segment on Joe Rogan, and the guy said, his guest, I forgot what his name was, he said that, you know, he was studying the concept of the word home. And in America or in the West in general, when you ask somebody about their home, they think about their actual house. But like when you go to a third world country and you ask somebody about their home, they talk about their village. Their people. And he said that, you know, his perspective is that, and this is a very true perspective, he said home is where your presence is felt and where your presence is missed if you're gone. And it really struck a chord in me, because I'm like, yeah, I have a lot of good friends here and stuff, but like if I left America, it really wouldn't change anybody's life, and my presence wouldn't be really missed that much, because people, it's a very individualistic life here. You put yourself first. That's just the way the parameters of America is, and it's not very communal here. Rather than like if I go home, the finances of life doesn't strike you as stressful because you'll always have family to back up on. Like we don't have homeless people, for example. We have poverty, but you're never going to be homeless because somebody will always take you in from your family, no matter which side of the family is it. So I just didn't grow up seeing people like sleeping on the street and stuff. So like we have poverty and we have problems. Yeah. But like when I come to America and I just see so many homeless people here, it was very striking for me to just see people on the street like that. Like that's just not something I've experienced before.
Well, on the outside world too, people think everyone in America is rich.
And you know, my perspective on that is that, like, you know, you watch movies, you know, oh, New York City, Hollywood, blah, 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 like growing up, for me at least, you know, and people outside of America. But, and there's this, like, even within America itself, people talk about, like, oh, it's less than 1% of this country that live the American dream. Well, for somebody who comes from a very strict third world country, the American dream isn't being rich in that top 1 percentile. To me, the richness in the American dream is being able to be who you are 100% of the time, something that you don't get to be in other countries. And I think there's like people take that for granted here, that you wake up and can go to bed and have spent your entire day not having to be conscious of being who you are 100% of the time. And that's something I can do within my own country. I have places where I can be, you know, my progressive side, and then there's other sides that I have to stick to the conservative rules. So like, and you have to abide by them. So like people don't think about that here. And that's what, to me, the American dream is, just being me. Well,
I think that plays into a lot of like the pros and cons of, you know, America versus, you know, other cultures that live in sort of this more village mindset. When you're living in these villages, the people you're surrounded with are going to be almost holding each other accountable to more traditional values. And what every generation, you know, has learned, there's going to be that pressure going down the totem pole down to the younger generation, which causes that less individuality. And I mean, growing up in my family, you can kind of sense that when you're in a family unit. In a way, if your parents have certain values, you feel like you have to have those values, you have to embody those values or you won't fit into your family dynamics. You feel that pressure, you feel that authority to conform. And we're 18, it's very normal for us to move out, which is weird because you're still a kid and all these kids are just moving out at 18. But because I was able to leave my house at 18, I was able to find my way. I was tripping and falling and, almost drowning at some points, but, I always found my way out, I found my way. And I battled this idea of like, what if you gave your child the perfect childhood? Would that person come out to have a lot of depth? Maybe, because, everyone deals with their week-to-week problems and things like that, and helping them guiding them through those tough situations in their life will train them to be able to withstand that hardship in a regulated way. And maybe they would be like great people, but there's that aspect, that line of like, do you spoil them? Do you shelter them from any sort of trauma to ever happen to them? People need to experience trauma.
Absolutely. I think there's pros and cons to different upbringings. One, the 18 thing, like you said, you throw yourself in a pit of fire to figure things out, right? And that could be positive, and also it has its cons. And also, like in my country, you don't move out until you're married, and people don't really have a problem with that at all. But like, what are the for me, I never really thought hard about, there's a lot of pros to that. You get to save up a lot of money, you get to figure things out, but like the cons of having to have relied on your parents your whole life till you went to your next step, rather than having to have, I think the space to experience yourself individually is so vital. So like if everybody in my country is just going straight from your parents' house till you get married, no matter how old you are, like where was that timeline where you got to throw yourself into the struggle of experiencing who you are eternally? When you're alone, that's the most you learn about yourself. I believe that, like, you learn about yourself from being around others, of course, in the relationships you've created in life, but then like aspect of having to have spent such an elongated time by myself is why I've truly learned everything that I've learned about myself. You take things in differently because you have this time and space to yourself, and there's no distractions from that. So touching up on, what was the last thing you said?
Well, I have a question based off of what you just said. So with that alone time, how does that influence your creativity?
That's interesting. Creativity, I feel like, is not something that is conscious for me. It's just a feeling. And, I'd be sitting down. My neighbor is a architect who has a very nice piano, and I'll just be sitting down, like eating lunch or something, or dinner, and I'm just playing with my cats, or I'm cleaning up or something, and then I just like get this like whiff of a feeling and be like, I'm gonna go to Jason's across the hall and start playing on his piano and start learning more on that. I go through these, it's a feeling every day. Like I start dancing as a feeling, and I play piano as a feeling, and it doesn't really feel like a conscious thing. I said before, this like month I spent with myself, it's been really hard to stay consistent being creative, because like, you're tired from work, blah, 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 this happened, and then you're like, I don't want to do anything. But that's really not a way to go about things, because if we only do things when we feel good, we'll never accomplish anything. So I have to be creative, and I have to apply all my hobbies and the things that matter to me every day, even when I feel like complete shit. And I have been doing that this past month every single day. Like I've applied myself to my creative outlets every single day, no matter how exhausted, tired, or bad I feel. And I think if we're able to overcome that, I think it is the greatest thing anybody can do in life, because we're always going to feel bad about something, but it's so easy to bring yourself down and just literally be lazy and get high and watch a movie or play video games. And I'm just not doing that shit anymore. And it took me, I'm 32 years. It took me of being 10 years, about 11 years of being a creative to get to this part of my life where I'm applying on a day-to-day basis, where for 11 years straight of being so like intertwined in the world of art that I never really consistently pursued it on a day-to-day basis, literally just up until recently. And for me, I think a big part of it, like if we go back to my childhood of not being able to be a creative because of my parents, it's really hard that coming to America in my early 20s, I'm 20 years old, and I was never given the opportunity to do anything creative in my life before. And it's like, I'm given this chance to, I go to an art school in upstate New York, and it's like, oh, like, I can join this dance group. I can go to the music hall and mess with these instruments. And I just like, it was like such an explosion of just like consciousness. Where I was like, wow, like I'm allowed to do all this. Like, this is so crazy to me. Like, and then absolutely, it was like a fever dream for me. Like I never slept in my first year. I literally like would just like go to class, do my homework or write my essays. And then like throughout the whole night, I'm just like going to different like art halls to like experience art like every day and night. And then from that, like, the struggle for me the past 10 years was having I don't know what word I'm looking for exactly, but having almost like that sadness that, oh, like I see so many American people here be successful because they started dancing or doing whatever art form or piano or music at the age of 4 and 5, and like they're really successful at it. And I had to, like, my youth, like my babiness, like almost started in my early 20s because I just like had to start figuring everything out by myself, artistically and socially and mentally and emotionally. Like, so that was like scratch one for me. It was almost like my 20 was almost like elementary for me, where like maybe I started to really experience my youth in like my late 20s.
Your inner child?
Yes.
I think that's where I'm at too. It's like I'm finally connecting to my inner child. Maybe I was doing trauma work before, but now like the fun part of it is like exploring the inner child with creativity and just playing as an adult, playing and going out, having artist dates and having fun, you know? I feel like these days adults just drink substances and go out to bars, but there's so much more to do than that. And I'm trying to explore that. I recently went sober, so it's been a week and a half. But I want to go for a long period of time, I think. I don't want to put a time frame on it or say forever. I don't want to have that pressure, but just like right now in this moment, it feels like the right thing to do is to just have fun without substances. And I'm also I'm really working a lot on buried dreams all the time. So in a way, it's a creative hobby, and I literally do that every single day, and I love it.
Question, what was the inspiration and why did you start Buried Dreams?
My therapist asked me this question today.
Incredible.
So I am prepared now. In high school, I used to make like little videos, like stupid, cringe videos, and I loved it. Like me and my best friend, we'd be so stupid and create these terrible videos, but it was so fun to make them, and I didn't care if anyone liked them or not. I would just post them and have a good time. And one of them went viral. There was like, I got like 125,000 views on it. It was like how to make yourself sneeze. And I don't know what made me stop. I think people were like kind of making fun of me and saying like, oh, I don't want to watch this. This is terrible. And I just kind of quit, you know? And I don't know. I was always super into watching vlogs, and in my 20s, I got super obsessed with podcasts and would think about like having a YouTube channel where I was creating media. And like in high school, a content creator wasn't a thing, but that's something that I love to do, is just like have ideas and visions and bring them to life. And it could be with film or whatever, but that's something I always wanted to do. And I never thought it was a feasible dream path. So early on in my 20s, I got really into podcasting, and I was listening to so many, and I always had this feeling like, oh, this is something I can never do. And I decided when I was 25, 26, that I wanted to start connecting back to that creative person, because I had done a lot of trauma work, and I had just started feeling safe again to, you know, when you don't meditate every day, journal every day, you're on this strict routine to make sure your mental health is stable, and doing therapy every week. I started to get to where it felt more natural, that I was feeling good. And so that's when I started to focus on like, okay, how can I be creative? Because I focused on overachieving my whole life, working in data science, trying to get someone to notice me or just to accept me and say, you're doing a good job, pal. And I read this book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And this book pretty much asked, what is like one thing that makes your stomach turn, creative hobby that you think you can never do, that you have no skill at, but it's, if you could do that and you could be an ideal creative, that's where you would go. And that was a buried dream, right? So it's something buried deep inside of yourself that it's covered, it's not going to come out. The book pretty much told me to dig it up, and I dug it up, and it said, okay, now whatever you need, if you need to buy ballet shoes, if you need to buy, I don't know, a camera or whatever it may be, buy what you need to buy, and buy good stuff, you know, buy stuff that you know you need to use. So I bought all the podcast equipment, and I got a video camera, and I was like, okay, I got $2,000 worth of shit here. And I'm like, she's like, put it on your credit card. I don't care. Like, just buy it. Like, this is something that's going to feed you. And this is going to be something that's so valuable in your life that $2,000 you can go spend on, fixing your car, spend it on something that's going to mean something to you in your life. And I was like, okay, I'm sold. So I bought all of it. And it was it's terrible when you first start a creative hobby because you're terrible at it. And I'm experiencing that now with the vlogs. I'm starting to go over the hump of my discomfort being on camera. But with the podcasting at first, I was dying inside of anxiety interviewing people. Just like having the headphones on, it was overstimulating and my heart was beating fast the whole time. I was always trying to think of like what to say next. But now I think you're my episode 16 and episode 16. High five. And I feel more comfortable than ever. It's like almost second nature to me and I love it. And I was like, okay, now I think it's important to always be uncomfortable in your craft. And I'm feeling discomfort with the vlogging.
Here's an interesting, I guess you could say, juxtaposition. I feel like it goes either one of two ways. There's example, the artist like me, and there's the artist like you. When I got to New York, I literally joined like the tango group. I joined the Latin group.
Tango.
Yes.
I just learned. Oh, you wrote me.
Yeah, I did. And I was like, I want to go to that group in Plano. But yeah, like I thought I'd love to start going. So yeah, so like I joined the Latin group, that 2 hip hop groups, and then those
were everything.
Yeah, those were just groups. And then I joined a modern and ballet class also for a semester. And that was like me just literally wanting to do it all. Now it's really ironic about like this, situation with you and I is the fact that when I started dancing those first 3 years, I was overtly confident. When I look back at my videos, like on Facebook, I like go down my timeline, I'm just like, oh my God, like I would go on stage and I would be so shit. And I would be like, oh, I'm fucking killing this. And it's really funny that the anxiety only started to creep in for me about being on stage or competing is when I actually got really good at it. Now, I think there's something fascinating in that, and I can't really tell you why, but it's just like when I was younger, and I'm like, yeah, like I got this, I'm fucking killing it. And I'm like,
every kid ever.
I'm like, yo,
I'm the best in this class.
I was like, I fucking murdered this shit, bro. And now like 10, 11 years later, like I've really honed my craft and I actually got really good at it. And now like I almost don't go out there as much with it. And almost like it just started becoming more and more of a personal thing. And then it's just like, now I have anxiety about being on like stage or going to battles or performing. It's really funny that now that I'm like, wow, like I'm creating something so beautiful with my art here, yet I don't like expose it as much as I used to when I was younger. I'm not really sure like why the brain acts like that, but I definitely started to keep more of it to myself when I became really good at it.
What are you doing? Are you wanting to expose it more Are you wanting to get over that fear?
I think every artist wants to get over that fear.
Of course. So what are you...
Buried dreams.
Yeah. So what are you doing to get out of that kind of headspace? Because that's a hurdle.
Your reel from yesterday. What did you exactly say in your reel yesterday? You said to just...
Do it.
Just literally just do it. Like literally doesn't matter how many views it gets. It doesn't matter how many people it reaches. And like for a long time, I would be like, you look at your analytics and then you see that like 2 or 3 people like saved it or like shared it. Mm-hmm. And to me, that should certainly be enough. And it is, because if it literally moved just a couple one person even, the fact that somebody was like, this is dope, I'm going to share it to somebody else. Like the fact that there's a number 1 under that share sign, that should literally be enough. And it is. So I feel like I need to always focus on that fact that every time I posted a video, there's just been a handful of like, saves and shares and, some comments here and there. And like that.
I see that. Sometimes people save the reels and I'm like, who in the world would want to save this?
I'm like, nope.
But that's special. I think that's like more than views or likes or whatever. Like, yes, when someone saves it or when someone shares it, that hits different.
Of course. And it's like, wow, like this actually moved somebody that they wanted to come back to this or they wanted to share it with a friend. That's incredible. How fucking cool. And I think we're just so dosed by like how social media is, and I'm like, oh, like it didn't get that many views and stuff like that. But we should never feel like that. Like if one person really, really liked it, then
or watches it all the way through, you're like, holy shit, thanks for being here, dude.
Yeah. Shout out to all you people out there who actually watch people's art through. Like there's so much happen. Like this is a very important topic. We're so ADD, like there's so much happening on social media. There's so many stories. There's so many posts that we're just flipping through everything. Like when have you actually sat down and sat through people's art through and through? That's what I do. You know, I'm not trying to like hype myself up, but I used to be like that. And I realized that if I want people to respect and give time to my art, you can sit for that 30 seconds and watch it through and see if it'll make you feel something. I started to watch people's art through and through because if I want something, then I should also provide it for other people.
Exactly. And I don't think that you really realize that position until you're in the position where you want people to enjoy your art and because I recently started to do this as well. Like I woke up one morning and I was like, we need to be investing more time in our friends who are creating art and showing them love and encouraging them and say, hey man, I listened to your track. It was super dope. Just like, it's so important for us to hear those words of encouragement and it keeps us going. But what I said in my reel was, our value as human beings is not based off of what comes out of us and what we create. And the external validation that we receive either is also not indicative of our worth as creatives. And something that I, starting out in the podcasting space less than a year ago, I kept looking at the numbers. I was always looking at the numbers, like, why didn't this episode perform as good as this episode? Oh, I feel like 3 weeks in a row, my numbers are down. Or if I posted a reel, I would check it 10 times that day to see if like, oh no, like no one's looking at it, or like, how can I make people look at it more? And it's like, fuck it, dude. I'm just putting it out there now. That thought still arises in me, but I really want to take this experience as as something to learn from, and not creating for external validation, but creating for myself. And even if something that you create is not perfect and it's not good or it's not at your best capability, just put it out there and move on. You don't need to harp on it, go back and judge yourself. Take the tools that you've learned from experiencing that piece of art and apply it to the next piece. And that's how you grow as an artist.
I love that. This kind of just gave me like a flashback, like you said, first you do it for yourself. And this reminds me of the first time I took a psychology class because I didn't know what I was going to major in. And then I went to a Psych 101 just because I needed to fill in a requirement in humanities. And I will go to a Psych 101 class, and it was 200 students in the auditorium. Professor was so passionate about the subject, and I've never like really intently paid that much attention to the subject. I was like 20, 21 years old, and the class was so mind-blowing. And the teacher is doing his job because one, he's paid to do it, and two, he's super passionate about the subject. All 200 students leave the classroom. It's the first day of the semester, and I'm the only one that stays behind. And I go up to him and I say, you changed my life forever. This is what I want to study. And the way his eyes just like beamed, like that is what you like. There was 200 people, and then it affected one person in there so deeply, and that's what he literally lives for. Just the way his eyes just looked at me, like he was so happy. And then I became that student where we'd have these bi-weekly meetings with me in his office. So like you see like what happened there, like the energy that I just gave him for something that he's probably been doing for like, he was an old guy, maybe like a few decades. That's what he literally lives for. And that's why I talk about like, that's that one share or that one save. Like you did something beautiful. And what people don't realize, and when I talk about the whole skipping people's art thing, is like that putting my art out there is a state of vulnerability because I'm expressing something very deep. So like people need to understand that I'm not doing this to be flashy. This song is not meant to, this dance is not meant to be, this film is not meant to be just a pure moment of entertainment. I'm literally giving you a part of myself. And that's why people struggle with posting, because art is so personal and it comes from deep inside of you, and it's something that you're trying to express. And when you post it out there, like you want people to understand that this is a moment of vulnerability, and that's why it gets difficult for people to post.
It's absolutely difficult for me to post. Anytime I watch my finished vlog at the end, I'm like, oh, I can't. I absolutely cannot show this to anyone. We're burying this 10,000 feet below the Earth's surface. No one's ever going to find this. But you got to just let go of the ego, and it is really vulnerable. I feel vulnerable. I feel scared. I feel worried about what people are going to think and their judgments. And, people really want, I think, the most important thing in this world is like, yeah, creating is so important, but connection with others is also super important. So I think that's why we're always looking for that external validation, because we want to connect, but it has to be true and it has to be authentic. And I think sometimes with this social media, people are really good at making stuff that's very digestible, like, oh, scroll. But at the end of the day, I kind of want to be a nonconformist and kind of go on the real, you know, like where I just create bullshit that's like feels good and it's fun and it's like not what is addicting, you know, but
Absolutely.
I want to go against the grain there.
I agree. I think that, yeah, I feel like everybody uses social media for different reasons, but it is a quick fix because you hop on there and your brain's trying to see what people are doing out there. And for me, like 90% probably plus on the people I follow are artists. You know, people are posting things that inspire me or just give me a moment like, wow, like this is awesome or this is beautiful. So it's mostly predominantly hop on there to see what kind of art people are putting out there. I have so many musicians and so many dancers on there and filmmakers, and that's what I'm on there for. So like it's nice being a part of a community, because when I make a post, it's predominantly the community that I'm a part of. Like, for example, the dance community, who might support it the most, where like maybe I'll get the most likes from or pay attention to, because your average day-to-day person might not care, which is okay. Maybe they follow me because they met me or whatever, but what I'm doing, they might not fully understand it. But I think the whole thing about being an artist is that you have to have such an open mind to what you're witnessing to truly like take in what the person's trying to express. Because if you're trying to look for something that only you understand, then it's going to go like right by you. And I talk about this in the, you know, dance is one of literally the most misunderstood art forms, and it's literally the most disrespected art forms and paid the least to, like, from out of the art forms that we have out here. And I talk about this and I always mention Backflip Joe. And Backflip Joe is when you go to a party or you go to a DJ set, and then, you know, me and my boys were actually like honed in dancer artists, and what we're doing takes such precise and like technical ability and just beautiful creativity that we've honed for years, right? And we're just going in on this floor and we're killing it and smashing it, and people are enjoying it to a certain degree, and people are like, oh yeah, like this is cool. And then Backflip Joe comes in and dude does a backflip, and then everybody goes fucking crazy. And like that is literally what we live in as dancers. And I want people to understand that what that dude did takes no fucking set of skills. You can do that in a couple of days if you practice hard enough and put your mind to it.
A backflip?
A backflip.
I can't do a backflip.
Anybody can do a backflip. But I'm just saying about what we're doing when we're dancing the way we're dancing, it's so, because like every human body and mind is so different. I've never met somebody who dances like another, and we're all doing something that's creative in our own way, and it's our waves and our energy in our bodies. And then you have a person who with zero technical abilities does something like a flip or something, and then suddenly that's what everybody has that moment of intense reaction to. And that's truly the world that we suffer in. You know, there's the average person didn't take in what we were doing because they didn't understand it, rather than just naturally having an open mind and trying to understand or at least take it in for what it is. You like the backflip because that's what your brain understood. Yeah,
but it's like this glorified moment, this extreme event, and everything else gets kind of washed away.
We hate you, Backflip Joe. Stay out of our circles.
Yeah, like some cool people doing some cool dancing, and this one guy doesn't do anything, just backflips. Everyone's like, whoa!
That was crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like that's kind of like the world that we live in. So it comes to social media as well. You come on there for a quick fix, and we're trying to express and show something special and something that's coming from within us. It's not meant to be flashy. It's meant to tell a story. And that's what I want people to understand.
I can sense the emotion you have in your dances.
Thank you.
I think I want to encourage everyone, if you see some cool art on the interwebs, just send some encouraging words, send a comment that says, hey dude, this video is dope. I loved it. This moved me. Because we all need a little bit of encouragement.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that, you know, on some of my posts, I get more likes from those sex bots than my own friends, that
says a lot. I'm like, the sex bots comment more on my videos than anyone else does.
Why am I getting more support from bots than you guys? Like,
I think the sex bots, I have a lot of sex bots that will follow me, but once I get the most, they're like, post this on viral feeds. Send DM Dallas feed now. Like, fired post, dude. Like, Yo, thanks for the support. I've gotten 5 comments in like the last 30 minutes and I literally just posted it 30 minutes ago. So
it's a tough world out there. Everybody's trying to do, you know, what a million other people are trying to do. And like, just think about what your friends go through, and literally all you have to do is just pay attention to what people are trying to express and support them, because all we have is each other, you know, like especially in a community or world where we're not famous, where we don't have that, you know, like, so all we literally have is each other. So just pay a little bit more attention, breathe, and take your time when watching other people's art rather than just like trying to find that quick fix on social media.
Absolutely. I feel like everyone who is creative wants to be famous in some degree. Like they, not necessarily they want to be famous, but they're trying to reach a community that will support them.
It's one or two things. It's fame is like a little part of it. I think the more realistic is you just want to at least make money with your art.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
fame is one thing. It's a far-fetched idea.
Gain a following to where you can live fully off of your art form.
100%. And I think that's every artist's objective is, can I live off of my art? You know, fame is one thing, but I think I don't really think about fame like that. I think about like...
I call it niche. I've coined this term called niche fame, where, you know, you have 10,000 people who watch your art and you're famous to them. You know, you have this niche fame, but it's like enough to support you and your craft, or however many people that takes to watch you and support you.
I agree. I think we all want that. I think like there's, you know, you have a post that has, like you said, like your viral moment, right? And for people who have had that post that went viral, like
the high
from like looking at your phone and seeing, you know, 1,000 notifications piled at once, you're just like, what the fuck? It is a dangerous and absurd rush. Like, it's just like, wow.
Have you had it?
I've had it with the most ridiculous post ever. Like, I've posted a few TikToks here and there, and then Wingstop had a really, really stoner, like trippy commercial on their website on the day of 420, and went on there to order wings. And then suddenly like there was visuals happening on their website, and I was like, I know what they're doing. And it was really, really, really funny. And I just recorded what they showed on their website. So of course my art form on TikTok never went viral, but like this hilarious Wingstop commercial on their website, because they're fucking with people who are stoned on 420. And I recorded it.
That's
and
too funny.
and it was, they literally knew what they were doing, and that post like reached like 300,000 views, right? And it's just so crazy. And I just look at my phone and it was like fucking blowing up. And I'm like, so like it felt good in the moment, but then it's just like, okay, like it was something ridiculous that went viral. It wasn't my actual art form that went viral. So like, so it was bittersweet. I didn't fully take it in.
It's nice to finally get that taste of what it feels like to go viral. You're like, holy shit, this is crazy. But also, like, I don't know if going viral is healthy, because then you're always searching to go viral, going viral. I think I'd rather have, like, you know, 50 listens, 50 listens, 50 listens, 50 listens, and then 60 listens, 60 listens, and then
and
like
a actual listening.
steadiness going up and having it grow organically, then be like 50, 50, 50, 130,000, 50, 50, 50, 40, 40, 30, 30, 30, 30. You know, it's like, oh shit, I was just trying to, I just want to, growing organically is...
No, I agree, because
it's
like,
a process.
You know, I have one viral video, and it wasn't even has to do with anything. It has to do with my art form or my hobbies or the things that I like love and cherish every day that I work on. It's just something that was absolutely absurd, and that's what people enjoy. And I'm not saying people don't enjoy it, but like after that, and I feel like there might have been, you know, an essence of a side effect that, you know, every post I made after that didn't really click that hard. And then your brain naturally starts to play with you. It's like, wow, like I had one viral post, but then like, you know, but when I'm trying to like express myself on the level that I want to express myself, it's not really garnishing any attention, and that affects you negatively. But like you said, you like the 50-50-50 is beautiful in itself, is because like if that 50 is actually paying attention to what you're doing, then that's beautiful in its own way, and that should be sufficient, because if you're actually reaching people and people are listening or watching, then that should be enough.
Yeah, I think we have to think in the scope of, if you had 50 people in a room listening to your podcast, how would that feel? Incredible.
That's Tiny Desk Concert.
Like, that's a Tiny Desk Concert. But I think somehow our mind distorts.
Because they're not around us.
So
it is, if you have 50 people watching or 50 people listening to you, that is literally a Tiny Desk Concert.
Really? I never see the audience in the Tiny Desk concert.
They only showed it once for the Usher one. He literally was like, hey, like, he's like, we've never showed the crowd. Can you guys just like appreciate the crowd for a moment? And they put the camera backwards and I was like shocked to see.
What's
like,
it look like back there?
It's just like literally it was like an open kind of like hall. I don't know how to explain it. There was literally like about 50 people, I would say also. Yeah. So it was really interesting. If you go on YouTube and you want to see the other side of Tiny Desk concert, it is the Usher episode.
So how did you end up in New York? What was the journey?
The journey was my dad went to teach at a college in upstate New York for 1 year. Gave me the opportunity to go study there for a year for free. Bard College. It's a liberal arts school. And, you know, my dad and my sister were also there. They went back to Palestine. I went back for a semester. I couldn't handle being home. So that one semester, I literally just try to pile up as much money as I can. And I moved back to America. My brother's been in Dallas for a long time. My older brother, he actually just moved to Dubai with his family about a month ago. So I was here with him for the past 10 years. So I did New York again, just for about 4 or 5 months after I came back, just for funsies. And then I moved to Dallas, and I've been here since 2012.
What do you think about the Dallas art scene?
The Dallas art scene is so judgy. It's like, it is. And it's like, we're out here, like, we're such a small community of artists that we should be hyping each other up and supporting each other rather than like, there's just like this weird, like
competitiveness,
but unhealthy competitiveness. And you try to put yourself above others. And like, I've experienced that in the dance world. It's just like, I feel like I haven't been as accepted almost by some people and some others. Yes. And it's just like, we should all literally be one community because like other cities are far more successful in coming together and creating really, really dope events and really, really dope, like, you know, competitions and battles and whatever else. So like, we should all just be like a lot more united here. And that's my experience of being here for the past 10 years is that like, I've had this close-knitted artist friends and they've been the same for the past 10 years. So like, it's really sad that that hasn't really expanded for me as much because I know a shit ton of artists, but don't really work with as many of them. We're not really as unified.
What kind of dance events are happening in Dallas? Because I've never been to one.
Every week there is every single week, I believe, every Thursday night there is
Inner Circle.
Yeah, there is a battle that happens. I believe sometime either like at Ruins or Cheapsteaks in Deep Ellum. You know, you go, you sign up, you pay $10, whatever, and then like so it's like a little, you know, and that's like more of like a for fun battle kind of thing. There is a little prize in there, and then every like once or twice a month there's like a major competition where it's like, you know, it's like all styles, like any style you want can battle any other style, and like a lot of people sign up and stuff like that. But you know, it's really fun. I haven't done stuff like that in a long time. I feel like because, like I say, that people judge or people have their own little like circles that they might not take me in much as I would like them to appreciate. So I feel like I've honed in and I feel like I'm so confident and I love what I do with my art. But I feel like the dance community here doesn't really make me feel that accepted. And I think that's really unfortunate because there should be no reason for us to like look at each other in like a weird or negative way. I think we should all just boost each other up. So.
Exactly. You're there to have fun. You guys are creating together, and yeah, it's a competition or whatever, but at the end of the day, just you're sharing a love of the art with one another. That's unfortunate that you feel like that. I do think judgment holds people back a lot from realizing their full potential in their art. It makes you second guess yourself. I
agree. So like for me, you know, I spent about 3 or 4 years without going to a single competition. I think actually more than that, you know, like I have my boy Mikey who sessions with me every so often, like almost every week. And then he was just like, you know, let's go. Like you've gotten so good, blah, blah, blah. You know, you disappeared for a few years. And like I disappeared for a few years, became really, really good with my art because I just focused on it by myself without having to see like my art, my dance became so good when I stopped letting other people see it, which is really sad because now I'm not focusing on what other people think. I just did it on my own and I grew so much within it when it became personal. And that's why I haven't been putting out as much. And then I go to this competition when I feel like I've gotten really, really good at it, right? And I go to this competition and I show what I have and it doesn't get a good reaction. And it's just like, because naturally people the same people who've seen me from 4 or 5 years ago, maybe when I wasn't as good, right? But I pop up 5 years later and it's the same troop of people, maybe just a couple of new faces here and there. And then I provide something beautiful and it doesn't get a positive reaction because all they have, the thought of me is from years ago, right? So you didn't take in what I had to give you and I gave in something that nobody else is doing and I created an art form that of my own style and it didn't get a positive reaction. And I was like, wow, this is why I don't come out here as much. Y'all are fucking shit. So I literally left, and I have my own little group of people that I dance with, and we do our own little filmmaking in our sessions and stuff like that. But those have been the same people that I've had for years. But on the community aspect of it, it just sucks that it's still just as judgy as ever, and it's very segregated. And I hate that.
Yeah, that's what I hear from everyone, that the community is very segregated and there's a lot of competition. The purpose of my podcast is to host an investigation of the Dallas art scene and try to understand where the gaps lie. And this is a very consistent thing I hear.
Ego's where the gap lies.
Ego. I mean, that's the root of all judgment and pride and all that, so...
I think like it's art, yo. Just relax, just appreciate it and have fun. Like there should be no ego in art. It should be just, we're just here, we're all together. We should all be a family.
Exactly. So with the skills and techniques, how do you get better? Are you going to classes, or are you at home studying other people's movements and trying to incorporate them into your style?
I think art in general is you're taking a little bit from here and there, right? But like it's in the dance world, it's literally, I mean, I guess in any art form, it's all about making it your own thing with that nobody else is doing what you're doing. That's the whole purpose of it. And what's so fascinating about dance, unlike any other art form, that it's literally your body. Right. So it's like 85% psychological and it's like 15% physical, because you're trying to do this thing with your body that your mind's telling you to do. And you just have to keep doing it over and over and over again until your body actually adapts to that movement. And it takes fucking years to get to that. So like I would say that through inspiration of different artists and different art forms that I've eventually created my own style with it. But at the end of the day, I feel like when I have my sessions with my like dance buddies, I feel like that's when I level up the hardest, because even though their styles are so different than mine, but it's the energy created in the atmosphere of creating art together that it propels us to, like, let's just say this week I danced, maybe like 15 minutes on this day, 30 minutes on this day, an hour on this day, right? I feel pretty good. I progressed a little bit. But if like Mikey and Paul come over and we session for 2 hours, that eclipses that entire week, because the energy of them, and like what's so beautiful about this art form is that if you're feeding me energy, even though our styles are so different, the fact that we're sessioning together and giving each other energy back and forth, suddenly I'm progressing on a much, much quicker pace and higher level than when I'm doing it by myself. We're not taking anything from each other. It's still our own thing. It's just pure energy give and take.
There's that connection and the creative, how important they are together.
100%. So that's why I love when they come over or we go out to film and it's like suddenly this explosion of creativity is happening, and it's more natural than, when I'm alone, I'm like, okay, like I'm feeling the vibe. I'm going to session for the next 15, 20 minutes and I'm going to put a few songs on, and I get down and I'm like, oh, I feel pretty good about that. But when they come over, like it feels godly. Like,
are you guys dancing in your 450 square foot art studio?
Yeah. Like if I show you a picture, it's a really, really dope space. I've created a very, very beautiful environment for people to come over and dance. Absolutely.
Oh, I love that.
It's like a tiny desk for dancers.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, that's how I've always thought of my space. Absolutely.
Well, I would love to go to one of these dance events that you're talking about, or
just to witness the energy.
I just want to witness it. Yeah. I also danced growing up. I did ballet, tap dance, and like modern jazz. And I've always wanted to learn how to hip hop dance. I can do a little salsa and bachata, and I did a little tangoing the other night, but I'm not good at it. I think I'm better at bachata. The best at bachata, because I always like grew up dancing on a 4 count. But salsa, I think it's so sexy, and I love to dance salsa.
Question: why do you feel like you weren't good at tango?
Because it was the first time I ever tried it. I was doing the footsteps as they led me, like I could move with the person. But there's like, certain ways that they step in the style. So like they go like back, and sometimes I would put the front instead of putting it behind. So like there's little stylistic things that.
Absolutely.
And like don't move your hips, because like in salsa, you're just like moving the hips. So like in tango, I'm trying to like move my hips, and they're like, no, keep your hips like a board. It's all about the.
It's so crazy. Like when you tango, it's just like, wow, like this is literally just walking.
It's walking. Yeah.
Like, and you're like, but now I feel like I don't even know how to walk.
Well, that's what happens is like if I can start out in a good momentum, but after like a couple minutes, I need to take a break, because I'll start to get jumbled in my brain about how I'm dancing. I don't know why, but I need to take like little breaks in between.
No, I get
because
that.
I'll get tripped up if I keep going for a long period of time. because I'll start thinking about it. I don't know.
It's beautiful. I think it's the whole point of it is the creating the balance between two people. And once you create that perfect balance between you and I, then we could move effortlessly.
That's beautiful.
So
I love partner dancing. It's so interesting to me that we can develop such a style that we can move around a room and not worry. You know, we have one person following and one person guiding, but the seamlessness that can happen of movement between two people, it's harmonious.
absolutely. And I think the history of tango is really fascinating because it used to be just men and men, because it was like men who were rich or of like royalty or of power who danced with each other. And it wasn't till this like one rich dude who danced with like his maid, and then like word got around or whatever, and like women started to be more involved. Like, so there's like, I don't remember the story fully how like our teacher told us about it back in New York, but literally used to be just men and men, like just rich men in suits who tangoed with each other, which is really fascinating to think about in the timeline so long ago, and like the whole aspect of masculinity and like the fact that men even back in the day were dancing with each other is a really fascinating thing to think about.
It is very fascinating because that would not fly in today's society. Two men tangoing, I mean, I'm sure it happens.
I mean,
but
my teacher was an Argentinian man, and he taught me how to tango, and like he would
he would guide you. I mean, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. But I feel like maybe 10 years, 20 years ago when everyone was gay, like, you're gay, dude, or whatever. It's,
literally, like there was a time where it was like, okay because rich men did
homo.
it. Yeah, no, literally, it was like a time where like rich men did it, and that was okay because they were royalty. And then probably like the century ahead, it probably wouldn't have been looked as acceptable. Mm-hmm. And then now it's like possibly cool again.
It just goes to show everything is socially constructed and just...
Well, it's like, you know, I come from like a very, very toxic masculine society, like in Palestine, right? And it's just like, you know, and then I come to America, and it's just like, you know, it's my first year there. And then my dance teacher is like, you know, doing a tango stance with me, and he's an old, you know, gentleman, and I have not an ounce of discomfort in my body. Now, like, why is it the case that, you know, I'm 20 years old, I just stepped out of like one of the most religious, constructed and oppressed places on earth, and then I'm like, oh, like, this is cool. Like, even though I wasn't really self-aware yet in my life, or like truly understood like, you know, my own, you know, identity and sexuality and stuff, but that like didn't bother me because I just knew who I was even at such a young age. And I'm like, oh, like, this is cool. Like, I respect this. It's art. You know what I mean? It has no premise on like being like, this is a dude. And I'm like, no, this is art. Like, this is what we're doing. So like, it was natural for me to just be comfortable with that, which is so crazy because even though I grew up in Palestine, that would make most men, or I say most straight men in America, probably even in today, very uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
So I think that's fascinating.
Even here in America, they would feel, even American men, they'd feel very weird.
Absolutely. So I think we just put too much emphasis on things that don't really mean that. And I think like, you know, like, why would you feel uncomfortable at something like that? Like, if you know who you are and you don't question your own sexuality and your identity and you know who you are, like, why should you be bothered by something that literally has nothing to do with that? Mm-hmm. Like, for example, like what I do like about Palestine and that my American friends don't like doing with me is we have something called shengel. And shengel is if me and my cousins or my brothers or whatever, we're walking around in the neighborhood or in the city back home, we wrap our elbows and we like wrap our elbows into each other like a triangle. So, and then we walk around like this. So like,
oh, just like in a straight line, kind of like
in a straight line. We're just walking around, and my elbow is attached to your elbow. We're like, my arm's in there and my arm's in there, and like we'll walk around like this, and it's called the shengel, right? And we just walk around coming like that's how I walk with my dad. That's how I walk with my brother. That's how I walk with my cousins, and that's something that's like very comfortable within our own society to be physically close. Right. So like, even though in a place that's so like, you know, recluse in terms of like that aspect. So like when I come to America where it's technically should be more open, right? And
it should be more open, but I learned this when I was traveling abroad that Americans need space, but if you go to like Costa Rica or something and you see a couple at a cafe, and you go to America and you see a couple at a cafe, the cafe in America, they're sitting across from each other, but in Costa Rica, they're sitting right next to each other, cozied up, they'll be kissing, there's more PDA and affection.
100%. Whenever I'm dating somebody, I'm like,
Touch me.
Like, no, literally, like
I'm a same side sitter.
I know, me too. And I know people sometimes don't want to do that over dinner and want to have like a formal dinner. Like for me, like if we're eating and if we're like having coffee or something, like I want us to sit in the booth together. Like that's way more. I know sometimes it's nice to like, I guess it depends on the event of the food or the coffee, but like, it's sometimes nice to look at the person, but also most of the time for me, it's way more nice to just be shoulder to shoulder. So like here, you know, I try to shenged with my boys and people don't like doing that here. Like,
because it makes them feel weird.
Why? Well, like, and like that's like you say, like how people are just so about space, but also they're so uncomfortable with themselves. Like, why would that make you uncomfortable? Like, just like wrap your arm around mine. I'm not holding hands with you. It's just literally the inside of my elbow is touching the inside of your elbow.
It just feels awkward because they've never done that in public before.
Yeah. So like, also in a society and
it's going to make you look gay too. Like,
yeah, like who cares? But who cares? Like if dudes back home who are super, super straight and super masculine are very comfortable with doing stuff like that and like with a bunch of toxic masculinity actually, then why shouldn't people who technically should be more advanced socially and more self-aware not be comfortably closer to their boy? That's a boy thing to me. That has nothing to do with anything else.
I know. It's a culture. It's culture, man. Like things just don't make sense. They're just socially developed and every culture evolves in its own way. And you can't say like why certain things are the way that they are. It just is.
Yeah. My boys here don't want to be that kind of close to me.
Oh, really?
Well, most of them.
My boys will be that close to me.
That's awesome. I wish I had
I have matriarch energy.
That's awesome. It's fascinating experiencing the different sides of life and, you know, French, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just, you know, I've been here all my life at this point, like half of my life. And I could tell you easily that as much as I've had such beautiful and very, very unique friendships, I've never had a friend like my best friends back home, ever. Like, and it doesn't even come close. Like, I wouldn't put anybody on the parameter of like people, how they treat me back home is not like how people treat me here.
The camaraderie and the genuine love and
I mean, like
the unconditional love.
Absolutely. So like when I go home to Palestine, in my friends, I have two main best friends back home. In their perspective, I just paid $1,000 and something for this plane ticket. I'm not going to talk about how much, and they don't think about it maybe consciously, but I made the effort to come see my family and friends across the ocean. When I am out with my best friends, for those 2 or 3 weeks, I almost never get to lay my hand on my own pocket to pay for something. And I think there's something so special in that I made the way to come all the way over there. And matter of fact, it's not just I don't touch my own money. My best friend is a professional musician and pays me to film his shows, which he has about 3 or 4 a week. So not that I'm not just not paying any money, I'm actually making money when I'm visiting. So like he literally just takes me like, be my filmmaker, manage it when I'm there, like the show, and I'm going to pay you this much. So literally I'm hanging out with my boy. He's paying me to hang out with him. And it's like, and outside of that, just never let me buy food and never, so like, that's how we're raised, and that something doesn't exist here. And it's sad to say that
yeah, it's like that in Europe too. They're like, oh, you paid to come out here, but also at the same time, just you still got to take care of yourself out here.
Absolutely. So I think I love that so much. And I try to, you know, even when on days when I'm broke, if somebody is visiting me from another state, I try my absolute best to make sure they're taken care of, at least in terms of transportation and food, to the least.
Yeah, at least like giving them accommodation, having them pay for their food here, right? Let's hold for a second because I have to pee so bad.
Me too.
What is your berry dream?
The fact that it's the name of the podcast and I didn't really brainstorm about this.
I can give you a little rundown of what a berry dream is, and maybe that can help.
Please do.
So a berry dream is something that you want to manifest in your artist's life. So if you could get to an ideal place in any craft, in any form, and be living in a certain way, what that berry dream look like? It could be in the short term, like something you're trying to accomplish in the short term, or it can be a long-term goal. Like when you reach that point, you know you'd be okay to die.
I'll start with the short term. The short term is I want to be able to inspire people on a larger platform than I already do. And I think, like you said, you need to start just posting and start like trying to reach people more. And it has to start somewhere. It can't just come to you like that. So I definitely, the bigger aspect of, yeah, you want to make money with your art. That's definitely like something that would be nice. That's one. But two, I think it's like being able to inspire people on a high level. I think the longer term is, I definitely, everything that I work on here and everything that I built myself up to be, I definitely want to one day to be able to maybe go back home to start some kind of school of art, or like some sort of like just something that I've taken from out here and everything that I've ever learned, everything that I've ever honed myself to be into, to be able to give it to my people as well, because art is growing so much back home that I want to be able to be a beacon of like, you know, just like this creativity for people to have a space to have that outlet and learn from. And I feel like I just want to be able to create something for people that didn't get to have that and don't get to have that, like I didn't back home specifically. So that's like the longer term, maybe just like way down the line, but like in the now, I definitely want to be able to inspire and reach more people.
Thank you so much, Sway, for coming on my podcast. It was really amazing to get to know your story more and talk about your traumas and your journey to the United States and transitioning cultures. It's something I relate to, not on your as deep as you, because you've been here for so long, but on a small level, I do feel that, and I appreciate you opening up.
Absolutely. And you talk about like, you know, having gone to like, you know, like therapy and thing like this art form that how you've had anxiety about and stuff like that, and sharing yourself with people. But truly like doing a podcast like this is almost like a form of therapy and being able to express yourself and provide your story for people. And for the 50 people in this virtual Tiny Desk concert who are going to listen to this, thank you for hearing my story.
Absolutely. And I think interviewing people and artists, I learned so much from every single person, and everyone's on their own journey and has their own experiences that they, you know, get them to where they are. But it seems like you're in a really good place. And I think a lot of times as people, we search on the external for everything, for socializing, for living. And I feel like you're on this journey now on the internal. You're going inwardly infinitely, which is so valuable in self-development and growth.
Absolutely. It's so hard to get there, but I feel like every person should definitely put in the time to really focus on themselves, because we're always such in a, you know, the way society's structured for always us to be in a rush to create some kind of like perfect future, like, oh, I'm going to be successful, I'm going to be all these things, but we're in such a rush that we almost forget what we have right here every day. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think about, like, I aspire and I dream and I hope, but I don't think about tomorrow anymore, because if I just think about tomorrow, then I'm not living in the now. And I think we have, every human being struggles with experiencing the now in such a, you know, organic level. And I think that getting to that where I'm at right now is very beautiful. And yeah, just live every day to its fullest potential and just love what you have.
Well, thanks so much for listening, everyone. And we'll see you next time. Bye.